Hello and welcome back to the Bottom Bins. A massive happy new year to everybody from myself and from Oran. Apologies for no episode last week. We just thought, look, we need a wee week break over the holidays, but you have us back now. And Oran, again, I'm going to say it for the fourth week running. What a week in terms of football news. Look, I'm going to hand it over to you very quickly, Oran. You're going to let everybody know what they're in for this week, and then we will crack right into our analysis.
Yeah, so as Connor says, this week has been crazy when it comes to football news. The start of a new year, and you wouldn't think there'd be this much football news to talk about, but we've had a lot of seconds. We're calling it second season. Even today, obviously on a lesser scale, Ryan Mason was sacked by West Brom, but we're not going to deep dive into the West Brom archives today. We're talking about Celtic's Wilfred Nancy. They've let him go after just 8 games in charge. We're talking about Ruben Amorim leaving Manchester United, which of course is huge news. And just as big, Enzo Maresca has left Chelsea. So 3 huge managers, 3 huge clubs making huge decisions, not necessarily huge managers. And then we've also got a wee Who Am I for you, which we've done before. So stick around until the end of the episode and see how you get on with that. But as always, let's talk a bit of football.
So, Oran, I think best place for us to start, obviously, as Manchester United fans, is with the news that was delivered yesterday at 10 o'clock. I hadn't quite gone back to work yet, so I was still lying in my bed, and I actually got woken up to the news that Ruben Amorim had been let go from Manchester United. I was absolutely buzzing. I thought that Santa had just left an extra wee gift there for us over Christmas. And look, this is going to sound horrible. At the end of the day, a man has lost his job. A coaching staff have lost their job, and it's not nice. It isn't nice. However, look, me and you have chatted about this before. Unfortunately, we weren't doing the podcast last year, so we could never actually get our opinions out there. But this, for me personally, was an appointment that I was not excited about. I did not want Ruben Amorim to be the manager of Manchester United, or head coach of Manchester United, as has been pointed out in the media. But look, listen, Oren, I think results wise, this made perfect sense. I saw your post on social media today, your opinion piece, and to be honest, Oren, I think you absolutely nailed it. I think you encapsulated the feelings of a lot of Manchester United supporters. If you look at this on a results basis, he was not good enough to be the Manchester United manager. The stubbornness to not change the system. When he did finally change the system, the results and the performances looked more positive. But because he's Ruben Amorim and he can't play any other way other than 3 at the back, he had to change back, and we got terrible results against Wolves at home, and in my opinion, a terrible result at the weekend as well, away at Leeds. I know Leeds are in good form, but Manchester United should not be losing or drawing with Leeds United. That's just my opinion. But the news is sparking, Oren, at the minute. There's a lot of talk. Ollie Ball might be back, and I, for one, I'm just absolutely delighted with it. What about yourself?
Okay, of course, it's huge news, and those who would have listened to the podcast, we kind of came in when Eric Ten Hag took over Manchester United, so our views on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer were pretty similar, I would say. Connor,
Yeah,
we love the feel good factor, we love the players that he had. Not necessarily world beaters, but they were doing numbers every week. That front 3 of Rashford, Greenwood, and Martial was unstoppable on stage during COVID. And look, it was good. It was good. Everything was rosy. The progression, you could see the progression in the style of play. Look, obviously there was some terrible results in there. You think about the huge defeats to Liverpool. You think about the 6-1 loss to Spurs. They're huge results that he needs to learn from if he does come back. But it seemed to all derail kind of whenever Cristiano Ronaldo came back to Man United. And as I said in my opinion post there, Connor, which I appreciate you mentioning, Ronaldo wasn't the problem at Manchester United. Ronaldo is a superstar. Ronaldo is the greatest player of our generation. Ronaldo has standards that he has set for himself. And when he came back to Man United, the players, the staff, the facilities, it couldn't meet the standards of Cristiano Ronaldo. He still produced 18 league goals that season. I think he had 24 goals in all competitions. That can't be the problem. That player cannot be the problem. However, his signing changed the culture within the dressing room. It changed the culture within the club when he came, and that was to the detriment of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's team and to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as the manager of Man United. There was that long spell of results where we had losses, huge defeat to Liverpool. We had a defeat 1-0 to Aston Villa. And then we had a wee result against Spurs 3-0 in between. And then it was obviously a 4-1 defeat to Watford, which sealed Ollie's fate. Look, I would say at the time, all fans, not necessarily unanimously wanted him out, but knew a change needed to be made. Needed to be made at Man United for progression to keep going. And then obviously everything happened with Ronaldo the year later after Rangnick and with Erik ten Hag. So it all just kind of fell apart. But look, with the news of him potentially being on the way back to Manchester United, I'm welcoming it with open arms. I loved the football that Ollie played. I loved watching Manchester United at that time. It was just a damn shame that you couldn't go over and watch United in the stadium at that time. The football they were playing was super silky, but obviously it was COVID. So, it'll be amazing if he does get tired. It's still speculation at the minute. There's been rumours, and Fabrizio and David Ornstein are saying that he's one of the front runners. But with Darren Fletcher on Wednesday for Burnley. But if I was to compare Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Ruben Amorim, as you said, when Amorim came in, the optimism around the club was kind of at an all-time low. Even though we had just won the FA Cup the season previous, he was much of a muchness. He was an unknown. He had a good result against City the last game for Sporting before he came to Man United. And I think people kind of hopped in the bandwagon for that. His first game, as happens with most managers, you get the manager bounce. He treated his system, said there's going to be a storm before things get better. And, again, mentioning my opinion piece, I don't feel that Ruben Amorim was the right manager for Manchester United, but I do think there was a lot of positives to take from his tenure at Man United. He got rid of some of the dead wood. A lot of the dead wood, in fact, he made some tough decisions. Personally, I thought it was time for Rashford to go. I like Rashford. I know you love Rashford. But his performances weren't to the standard Man United, and it was time for him to go. I'm not saying there's no route back for Marcus Rashford at Manchester United, especially now that Amorim's gone. But getting rid of the likes of Garnacho, Rashford, Onana, Antony, those sort of players, Sancho, that's a huge call for a manager in his mid-30s with not a whole pile of experience. That's a huge call for him to come in and do that. I respect him for that aspect. I respect him calling out the board, because this board from top to bottom is still a mess. Just because they've sacked the manager, and we'll get Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in probably, which will put a feel-good factor into the fans, but it shouldn't be an excuse for fans to get off the board's back. The board is still the problem. Top to bottom at Man United is still a problem. Glazers, Radcliffe, it doesn't matter who it is, they're still the problem.
Yeah.
And until something fixes up there, nothing's going to change in terms of culture and in terms of winning trophies for Man United consistently. So my personal opinion is, yes, I would say I'm happy to see Ruben Amorim go, which I'm not like that. I usually back the manager to the hilt every year. If you ask me who's going to win the Premier League, I say Man United, and I'll say Man United until it's mathematically impossible to say Man United. It was time for him to go. But by no means should the hiring, or even on a temporary basis of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, disparage fans from really the shit that's going on behind the scenes.
I totally agree. Totally agree, Oran. I don't think I could have put it any better myself, to be honest with you. And you're totally right. This board, Glenios, as they're now being called, is.
I've never heard of Glenios.
Oh yeah, lad! It's all over. It's trending on X even. Sorry, trending at the minute. Yeah, Glenios is what they're being called now. Yeah. No, it's shambolic. It's shambolic. You know, you only have to read the reports there from today. The fact that Jason Wilcox had a meeting with the players, and he said himself that this decision was unexpected. Like there was no plan in place here. This was just manager, poor result against Leeds, makes a few comments in the media. Quite clearly, those three weren't happy about it.
Mm.
Being Radcliffe, Barada, and Wilcox, and that manager gets the chop the next morning. And the thing I found, a bit laughable about the situation was obviously yesterday Ruben Amorim was then videoed and pictured having a walk with his wife after being told he had been sacked by Man United, and
He was buzzing.
he's smiling and laughing
He
away.
was buzzing.
Like, that's crazy. That is crazy. But look, listen, genuinely, I do wish Ruben Amram all the best for the future. Of course you do. And I'm like yourself, Warren. I do not like to be one of these Man United fans that's calling for the manager's head. And to be honest with you, Warren, I never did. I never did. It's not as if me and you come onto this podcast and we're like, Amram needs to go. He's a terrible manager. You know, nothing like that there. But secretly inside, I mightn't have said it, but I was
Yep,
definitely feeling it.
I agree with
And
that.
I definitely, especially this season, or watching Man United. Now, I'll hold my hands up and I'll be the first to say I really struggled to watch Man United last season. And to be honest, there's a lot of games I just didn't watch last year because we were so poor. And we've said it before. This is in our lifetime the worst Manchester United team I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
But this season in particular, in games against Everton, in games against Wolves, even some of the games at the start of the season, Fulham away, I'm thinking to myself, why are we so stuck on this three at the back thing? Can we not just be a wee bit more expansive? Can we not really put the pressure on the opposition? And to me, sometimes stats are a lie. And the stat that United are creating the most chances in the Premier League this season. To me, it's a bit of a false narrative because if you look at some of the chances we're creating, like somebody had it up there the other day. Yes, United have created the most chances in the Premier League, but they're like mid-table in terms of XG. It's not as if the volume of chances they're creating mean that the chances they're creating are good chances. A lot of those chances are just like Bruno getting the ball from 30 yards out and just deciding to have a pop,
Mm-hmm.
or Ahmad cutting inside and deciding he's going to whip one into Rose's head. Like that's the sort of chances we're talking
Yeah.
about this season. But I do feel like media wise, he definitely commanded a lot of attention. I think he did handle himself well in the media to a certain extent. There were things that he said, especially last season, that I thought, you're the Man United manager. Like, why are you saying this to journalists? Like, there was some of the stuff he said was just absolute clickbait stuff, and you're like, people are going to jump on that, and you are going to get the Mickey taken out of you for some of the things you said. Like, we know it's the worst Manchester United team ever. I don't need you to say it. I don't need you to tell people that like that is you're the Manchester United manager. You're supposed to be the steward for the football club, and you're coming out with statements like that. Like, he just did a lot of things over the last 14 months that he was in charge that just really made me question, is this guy the right guy? And more often than not, I find myself coming to the conclusion that he's not, and he's nowhere near it. And it's like you said, that all goes back to the board. It's sheer and utter incompetence right from the very top of the football club that has filtered right the way down onto the playing pitch. It seemed to me like he was a manager that wasn't too fussed with Manchester United's academy, that he wasn't that fussed on playing youngsters. I mean, to me, the only reason youngsters are playing at the minute is because we are so hamstrung with injuries and with AFCON. To me, that's the only reason why those players are getting an opportunity out there. But you only have to look at his handling of Kobe Manu, and yeah, Kobe didn't help himself either, especially with that whole with his brother and the t-shirt thing. Like, again, shambles. But like, we're talking about a kid, a 19-year-old, or sorry, was 19 at the time and played in the European final, and couldn't get a kick. Couldn't get a kick. Owen was told that he was behind Bruno in the pecking order.
Yeah,
Like,
you know what though? I love Kobe Manning as much as the next man, but I don't like the narrative that he wasn't given chances. I know he didn't start a lot of games, and he was given, maybe 10 minutes at the end of games. The one game he did start was against Grimsby, and we
yeah,
all seen what happened. And not to put that result solely on Kobe Manu, because it wasn't just him, but he was pathetic that night.
yeah, he
You know what I mean?
was.
So,
He was poor that night.
yeah, but at 20 years old, you shouldn't have this expectation that you need to start from Man United based on your past, based on your past performances. I understand completely. Kobbie Mainoo should start for Manchester United. I know that, and he should. But at 20 years of age, you shouldn't have that entitlement. And I did respect Ruben Amorim saying about the academy's entitlement. I think too many players now in United's academy think that because they're coming through the academy and because they've maybe got a sniff at first team, that they deserve first team football completely. And that's just not how it is. Like, if you look at the last 5 years, there's very few academy graduates that have actually made it into United's first team.
Yeah,
Even the last 10 years.
yeah.
The majority of them's playing, in the Championship. There's some in League One. There's some in the Netherlands. There's some in Germany. It's that sort of, that entitlement does need to stop. But Kobbie Mainoo, yes, deserves a start. But I'm also a big believer in when you get your chance, you have to take it to keep them opportunities coming.
I do understand where you're coming from, Oran, and I think this is probably I think this is maybe a point that me and you will come to that we'll probably just have to agree to disagree on it.
Yeah.
Probably, to me, I just feel like Kobbie Mainoo had already done enough in a Manchester United shirt to warrant playing, and the fact that you had a manager come in that played a system that hamstrung his abilities, and to me, it was just like it was two opposing forces coming together, and it was just never going to work out. I don't think even if Ruben Amorim was still the Manchester United manager right now, I don't think Kobbie Mainoo ever gets a kick in Manchester United's team. To be honest, lad,
I don't think he's in either.
no, I
Don't
don't
think he's
either.
injured.
No, I don't think he is either. Or, and I think for him, he's happy that Amorim's gone because
Yeah.
he is going to play football again.
Yeah.
However, I think that he was not injured and was going to suddenly not be injured for the January transfer window, where he was possibly going to try and engineer a loan move out of the football club. But I did say it a few weeks ago, Warren, on the bottom bins, that I felt like if Kobbie Mainoo did leave, that would have been a massive FU to Manchester United fans.
Yeah.
To me, that would have been a massive middle finger to the face. That, like, you only have to hear ex legends of Man United, like people like Paul Scholes, who you could genuinely say is the greatest midfielder to ever play for Manchester United.
Yeah.
If he's turning around and saying that Kobbie Mainoo is the best academy graduate that Manchester United have produced, why can he not get a kick in the team? Like this, it's things like that that wore me down on Amorim. But Oren, just out of curiosity, where do you think Ruben Amorim goes next?
I think he goes back to Portugal. I think it would be like, by no means. I know Man United's like a graveyard for players and managers, but by no
Yeah,
means I think Ruben Amorim's managerial career is over. I actually think it's just the start of it, and I do think as football does keep evolving, I think he will be a top manager somewhere.
yeah,
I would say for him the best thing is to go back to Portugal. If he was able to get back into sporting in the next couple of years, next few months, in a year or two, whatever it is, or even take a job at Porto. The Porto manager is being linked with a load of big jobs
yeah,
in the summer. Going in there, that's the sort of job he should be looking at, or on an international level. I do think he'll get a top level job, no problem. And to be honest, I could see him back in the Premier League one day. As I said, football's evolving. There's definitely going to be a time where that 3-4-3 system works and it's going to dominate. And he could be the man to bring that. He's 39, I think. I don't think he's 48. I think he's 38 or 39. He's got
yeah.
he's got a huge ceiling of potential when it comes to managerial opportunity. So he just needs to, probably be more. Not that I have any experience in managing apart from our Man City days, but I would say he needs to adapt more to certain situations within games. We talk about the Wolves game and in particular the Everton game where we were down to 10 men. And he's just married to that system, and that's 100%. But you need the players to be married to that system, and you need to be able to adapt whenever things don't go to plan.
Yeah. No, listen, Oren, I absolutely agree. And, look, like we said at the start of the video, it's not nice when any manager loses their job, but I do feel like, and I've seen the consensus online anyway from Manchester United fans, a lot more people are, look, I don't want to say happy, but I think a lot more people are relieved that Ruben Amorim is no longer the Manchester United manager, then I have seen people that are up in arms about Ruben Amorim not being the Manchester United manager. But look, it's probably a topic that I think we will revisit at some stage, especially, if Ollie does come back in to Manchester United. Maybe we'll have a deeper conversation about it one day then, and we can reflect on his time at United. Maybe, if Ollie comes in as an interim and then the next manager's announced in the summer, I'm sure we probably will go back and revisit his tenure at some stage. But Oran, we'll move on to Enzo Maresca now anyway, and Chelsea. And news was broke today that Liam Rossinier is the new Chelsea manager. Big gamble, really. A manager with not a lot of experience, but with the limited experience that he's had, he's shown a lot of promise. A bang average footballer, but has looked a very solid manager so far. Has done an excellent job with Strasbourg, but kind of similar with Amram, Oren. Enzo Maresca seemed to be the one that shot his own foot here. What was your take on it?
Well, from the reports that's coming out, just quickly back on Amorim, the reports that's coming out, Amorim was sacked. He dug his own grave and he was sacked. Whereas it very much seems that Chelsea were happy enough to stay with Maresca, but obviously it was a fractured relationship there.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was a fractured relationship, that it was completely broken. This is a manager who obviously came from Leicester City and was coming under a lot of scrutiny. That's a huge jump from Leicester City to Chelsea.
Yeah.
And he joined them whenever they were in the playoff or the preliminary rounds of the Conference League. He went on to win that competition. Look, that's a competition Chelsea should have been walking through anyway.
Yeah.
Whoever was the manager, but he still won it. And then obviously in the summer won the Club World Cup, which was a huge achievement, really. Considering it was the first time the Club World Cup was really taken seriously as a tournament. I think it was done right, not necessarily at the right time, but it was done right. And they had huge results. The big PSG, who are the current champions of Europe.
Yeah.
I think Enzo Maresca, much like Amorim, he has a good potential as a manager. If Enzo Maresca does get announced as the permanent manager of Man United, there's been rumours on that as well. I don't think I would be disappointed per se. I don't think I would be too optimistic, but I don't think I would be disappointed. There's a load of different ways you can look at Maresca's time at Chelsea. Chelsea are just one of them football clubs at the minute. You need results fast.
Yeah.
As soon as things get tough, especially because they don't have footballing people in the background, it's going to be tough for any manager to go into that environment. It might be a bit different with Liam Rossinier because, he's been part of that Blue Coat group for the last little while, so he kind of knows the hierarchy. He's been chosen to be this Chelsea manager. Hasn't been a long process. It was probably in the cards, him going to Strasbourg. If you do all right here, you have a good chance at the Chelsea job if it comes up. So look, because he probably has that relationship with the hierarchy, he signed a 6.5-year deal.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal for a manager. A huge deal, especially for a club that does turn over managers so frequently, especially since Abramovich, left as owner. But for Maresca, he'll not struggle to get an opportunity. I think he could walk straight back into management tomorrow, no problem.
Yeah.
As he left Chelsea because he felt he couldn't do it anymore. He felt he wasn't getting the support, wasn't getting whatever. He said it was the worst 48 hours of his life or whatever. And yes, there's a point you can't come out in the media and say all this stuff. You can't get too emotional as a manager to the media because otherwise you're done for. You can get emotional behind the scenes, but to the media, that's when it's game over. But as I said, I don't think he'll struggle to get another job. It's just, will he produce with another job? With Chelsea, you're given an unlimited pool of money. You're given any target you want. It doesn't matter how many wingers you need, you'll get every single one of them. It doesn't matter how many defenders you need, you'll get every single one of them. He failed to an extent with that team. I know he won the Club World Cup, but I would say he failed to an extent with that team because that pool of money that he had should have been invested better. And I'm not necessarily saying he was the man to make all them decisions, but you cannot sign Bino Gittins, you cannot sign Garnacho in the same window. Bino, you can't sign them fellas and sell the likes of Madueke. It doesn't make sense to me. Them sort of transfers didn't make sense to me. They need proven goal scorers, proven Premier League players rather than potential. In 5 years' time, that could be the best team in the league. But whenever they're a club that's searching for the now, I think any manager was going to fail, really.
It is. I think with Maresca, I probably have him down as like a net positive in his time at Chelsea. Yes, as you said, like he won a trophy that really Chelsea should have won anyway, regardless of who was in charge of the club. But you still have to win it,
Yeah,
and
I totally agree. Yeah.
you only have to look at Wilfred Nancy at Celtic. Like Celtic are just expected to win the league, and he's not he didn't pull up any trees there. Didn't look like he was going to win the league, and it's the same. Like if you go into Bayern Munich, I'm sure like it's just expected that you win the Bundesliga. Like people say it all the time. Like, oh sure, they don't even need a world class manager. Like any chump could do the job and they'd still win the league. But I still feel like you have to go and win the trophy. I think winning the Club World Cup was massive.
Mm-hmm.
Beating PSG in the final was massive because like I don't think anybody like would disagree. Like PSG is the best team in the world. They have the best manager currently in the world, and that was a massive statement of intent. But I do agree with you. I don't think the money was spent wisely. Now I don't think that's his fault though. I do firmly believe, kind of like Man United, it's like it's an incompetence at the board level that allowed this situation to happen. I do rate him as a manager though. I do think he is a decent manager. I know a lot of Chelsea fans question some of the tactical decisions at times, particularly substitutions, particularly late on in games. They ended up like sort of throwing a lot of like 2-1 leads or 1-0 leads, and I think that's worrying. However, when you look at Chelsea's back line, are you really that surprised that they were throwing leads? Like they're really not that great at the back. But I look at some of the individual development, and like you only have to look at Moises Caicedo, who has been absolutely superb. Genuinely looks like if he's not the best six in the world, he could certainly be in and amongst, the top two, the top three. I think his development and his work with Caicedo was absolutely superb. I think his work and his development, even with the likes of, Levi Colwill. Levi Colwill, I know he's been injured, but like was really, really looking like a standout performer, like a really strong centre half. Looked like he had a good chance of possibly being one of the first names on the England team sheet, at a World Cup as well. So I do think he is a good man manager. I think he's a great developer. He has a progressive ideas, progressive way of playing football. And look, I completely agree with you, Oran. I don't think he'll struggle to find another management job. I do feel like if Pep is to leave this year, I think he's probably the most likely Manchester City manager. And I do think that is the one that's coming up. But Oren, we'll move on to Scotland, and we'll move on to Celtic. And we talked about this 2 episodes ago. I personally felt like Wilfred Nancy had a lot to prove as the Celtic manager, even though he seemed to think that he did not. And again, like I've already said, it's a job that people just expect you to walk into and be successful straight away. But it's quite clear, Oren, in the 3 managers that we've talked about tonight and the 3 situations, there's incompetence at both the top and on the pitch as well. What's your take on Wilfred Nancy?
Yeah, I said it a couple of weeks ago as well. You can't come into a club like Celtic and just expect success, especially given the time that Celtic's going through at the minute. They're in a bad run of form. There's really, really difficult problems at board level, and they don't have players at the minute, to be honest, to compete for the Scottish Premiership, in my opinion. I was speaking with Owen the other day, obviously Owen, huge Celtic fan, and he couldn't wrap his head around the appointment. It's not like, this was a knee-jerk decision for Celtic. They had time to find the right man, and they identified Wilfred Nancy as the right man. Obviously, the timing was terrible. They shouldn't have hired him right before Cup final. They should have kept Martin O'Neill in that position. And obviously, since he's been sacked, they've rehired Martin O'Neill until the end of the season. Which the Celtic fans are very happy about. But it just shows that was a complete mistake from start to finish. An absolute shambles, really. But for Nancy himself, I don't think it's done him any favours. I think he took this job after doing a decent job at Columbus Crew, from what I've read about. I didn't know the fella beforehand. I'd never heard of him. But even stuff that I've read, he was the assistant for Thierry Henry at Montreal. Thierry Henry is not a good manager. Excellent
Yeah,
footballer, one of the best footballers ever, but he's not a good manager, and he was the assistant for him. So for them to identify him as the man to lead, one of the greatest historical clubs in European football, it didn't make sense to me. Obviously there's problems in the background, as I've said, for all three of these clubs, but I still firmly believe, and I said it to one the other day, and it might be naive of me to think this. I think Celtic should win every game in the Premiership. I think they should compete in Europe and get out of the group phase, or group stages, as it were. I think that's the level the Celtic should be at. They should win the cup, and they should win they should win the cup. They should win every domestic competition, and they should get out of the group in Europe. That's the level Celtic should be. That's the level of club they actually are. They just don't have it from the board. They need somebody to actually buy the club and bring them back to the European dominance that they had, and European stature that they had. Not necessarily dominance, because they're not going to dominate European football necessarily, but they're a European powerhouse. You know what I mean? This is the first British club to win the European Cup.
yeah,
You know what I mean? The size of this club is huge, and I really think Wilfred Nancy underestimated the job he had to do walking into Celtic. I think he, as you said about Bayern, and as you said about Celtic, he walked in thinking, I'm going to have to do nothing here, and I'm going to win the league here. They were in such a good position. Well, they weren't in a good position, but they were in a decent position when he took over because of Martin O'Neill steadying the ship. They were 3 points behind Hearts with 2 games in hand, one of the
yeah,
games being against Hearts. They were, I think, 8 points ahead of Rangers, and they were about to play in the cup final against St Mirren, who they
yeah,
absolutely should be walking off the field. And they lost to St Mirren, they lost their game to Hearts, and they lost from 1-0 up against Rangers, their biggest
yeah.
rival at Celtic Park. His time was well up before it even started. But, I've seen even MLS accounts on X saying that they'd have Wilfred Nancy back in the morning. So he shouldn't struggle to find a job back in America. But I think in terms of European football, that was his first and only job.
It's a big call, isn't it? It is a big call, but you know what? You're probably not wrong, to be honest with you. It's as you said, sometimes it just feels like, when you see people come over and they take jobs like Celtic, it's like you said, like they probably almost feel like they don't really have a lot of work to do because their squad should be so superior to everything else in that league that, the team almost coaches itself. But I totally agree with you. You have to look at Celtic squad on paper, like they're poor. Like Celtic are poor. And again, like we're talking about the worst Manchester United team in our lifetime. Like this has to be one of the worst Celtic teams I've ever seen in my lifetime. They're
Yeah.
so poor, so far off it. You know, you look at Hearts squad as well. Like it's not as if Hearts are a good squad, but
But they're,
their manager's getting the best out of them, and
yeah,
they look like them and at the minute, to me, it looks like them and Rangers are probably the two that will fight it out for the title. Now, Martin O'Neill obviously will come in. I am sure Martin O'Neill will do a good job. I am sure he will. I'm just not personally for myself. I'm just not sure if Celtic have enough to go and win the league. Um, I would expect them to win something. I would expect them to win, the Scottish Cup or at least compete in the Scottish Cup. But I don't know if Celtic have what it takes right now to go and win the league. I just think there's so much negativity. The board is awful. The supporter, you only have to see how hostile of an atmosphere it is in Celtic Park at the minute. And do you know what? They're absolutely entitled to feel the way that they feel because that is a shambles up there. And I do feel for them because it is poor. But look,
sorry.
no, work away, shout away.
Yeah, sorry. No, I do think they have enough to still win the league this year. It's one of them leagues. You play everybody 4 times. You're going to get that opportunity to build them points up against Hearts. You're going to get the opportunity to build them points up against Rangers. Like they're level
Yeah,
points for Rangers.
yeah,
But you're going to get opportunities in the second half of the season to get points off teams. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And with Martin O'Neill coming in, the one thing he's not going to do, he's not going to play Liam Scales at left wing back.
No,
Do you know
definitely
what I
not.
mean?
No, definitely.
I think this manager came in and he looked at Celtic. I think he looked at his next job after Celtic when he came into
Yeah.
Celtic, and he was
Yeah.
looking, I'm going to win the league here, I'm going to turn it around for Celtic, and I'm going to get a Premier League job. And it hasn't worked for you, mate, and you've got sacked after 8 games.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's pathetic. What was it, 33 days or something in charge?
Yeah.
Like it's pathetic. An absolute indictment on the board as well. But look, Oran, like I've said, in these three situations that we've talked about here, these three managers losing their jobs, it's all coming down to one factor, and it's incompetence at the very top level of these football clubs. Like, this is not as if we're talking about, Lincoln and Grimsby and, teams like that. And listen, no disrespect to them. We are talking about three massive footballing institutions. As you rightly said, Celtic, the first British team to win a European Cup. We're talking about Manchester United, probably, and still probably is the biggest football club in the world. And we're talking about Chelsea. Chelsea, an absolute institution of the last 15 to 20 years, modern day football. What is going so wrong at these football clubs, Oren? Where are ownership issues like this coming from? Is it incompetence? Is it maybe not having the right people in the jobs? Or is it just awful decision making at the top level?
I don't know if I'm necessarily qualified to answer that question either, to be honest. But
But you can speculate, lad. You can
yeah,
speculate.
from my opinions, I would say that there's too many people behind the scenes in these football clubs that aren't football people. We've seen it for years at Man United where it was businessmen, at the helm of the club. It's very much like that at Celtic. It's absolutely like that at Chelsea.
Yeah.
You've got a top bully who, he's gonna spend the money, and that's fair enough. But you need to run a football club properly, and it's just about getting the right men from or women from top to bottom, and changing the culture of a football club. It's getting people who know the roots of a football club. This is why we're so happy about getting Ollie in. This is why I put the opinion piece that I want Roy Keane in. It's changing the culture, not just in the dressing room, but behind the scenes as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, you need football people. You need football people. And it can't, it's as people always say about football dressing rooms. It takes one snake in the grass to ruin an entire team culture. That goes for every team in life, not necessarily just a football team. That goes for a scouting team, a recruitment team. That goes for a leadership team. All of these, the directors, you need to have everybody on the same page, working towards the same targets. If you have one person who isn't aligned with that, they're the one that needs to go.
Yeah.
And everybody needs to be aligned on the same approachable goals and achievable goals. The people who come in at Man United can't be thinking, we're going to win the league next year. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. The ones at Celtic should be coming in thinking that they're going to win the league, but they should be completely focused on Celtic.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be focused on their own career. They should
Yeah.
look at Celtic as an honour. They should look at Chelsea as an honour to manage. They should look at Man United as an honour to manage. And it's about getting the right people in. And obviously, in these three situations, maybe not Maresca. I think Maresca was a good appointment for Chelsea as well. I agree with you on that. But I think, especially in terms of United and Celtic, they put too much time into the wrong people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, listen, I totally agree with your sentiment. Not really much more I can add. Oren, we will move on to our final section. Who am I? Got some nice responses to the last one, actually. People were like, Richie, how the fuck did you not know that it was Nicholas Anelka? I was like, mate, I did not know he played in India.
Well,
So,
look, hopefully you
look,
get this one a bit quicker.
I might to redeem myself now, so I am. So,
Yeah.
please give me an easier one.
No, it is easier. You should get this one. You should get this one, and the viewers at home should get this one as well. There's a few early clues in there that it can only really be one person, but
Okay.
some difficult clues in there as well. I'm not going to lie to you. But
Okay.
just a quick recap: we've got 5 questions for Who Am I. I'm going to give you 5 facts about this player, talking in the first person as if I am this player. If you get it after clue 1, you get 5 points. Clue 2, 4 points. 3 points. 4, 2 points, and 5, 1 point on the board. Richie, you've got 1 point on the board so far. So I think we'll crack straight into it. You ready to go?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, number 1. I am a forward, and in my entire career, I've scored 111 goals and provided 67 assists from 562 appearances.
I think I'll need another clue, Oran.
Yep. Number 2. In my career, I have shared a dressing room with Edgar Davids, Robin Van Persie, Craig Bellamy, Dries Mertens, and Ryan Shirky.
Ooh.
What a spread out bunch that is, lad.
That is a spread out bunch. So, the Edgar Davids one is throwing me. Right, so Edgar Davids, Robin Van Persie, it would immediately make you think, is it a Dutch player? And then you're thinking, Dutch forwards. See, again, now, because the assists were high as well, I'm thinking of like a target man, a big man that you lumped up there, but they could play with the ball a wee bit. Right, if I have a guess and I get it wrong, am I out?
No, you're not out. No. Have a guess and you're out.
Is it Klaas-Jan Huntelaar?
It's not Klaas-Jan Huntelaar.
Ah, damn it.
I could see the vision, but I don't remember Klaas-Jan Huntelaar playing with Ryan Shirky.
Oh, yeah, fair enough, actually. Yeah.
Or Craig Bellamy.
Okay.
Clue number 3.
Yeah, go for
it. This is the clue where I think people will jump straight on it.
Okay.
This is a chance for people and yourself. I currently play on loan for a team that is managed by former Aston Villa manager Dean Smith.
I don't even know who Dean Smith manages, lad.
No.
Currently play on loan for a team Dean Smith manages.
Think about that career, he's still playing.
Still playing?
And I will tell you, it's not one of the clues. He's only 33.
He's only 33. So he played with Robin Van Persie.
No, he didn't necessarily share a pitch with them, but he shared the dressing room with these players.
But shared a dressing room with them, right? Craig Bellamy. And Ryan Shirky. Like, I assume when he was playing with Shirky, Shirky's only played for Lyon and Man City, obviously. So it would have had to have been somebody that was playing for Lyon and was a forward at Lyon. Like, the automatic one you would jump to as a forward would be like Lacazette, but it's not Lacazette because Lacazette never played with Craig Bellamy.
Yeah.
And I don't think Lacazette ever played with Robin Van Persie. He would have been after Van Persie's time at Arsenal, obviously. Yeah. I'm trying to think of Dutch forwards too that played for Lyon. Oh, me. Is it Memphis Depay?
Not Memphis Depay. But that's where I was leading you to. But it wasn't him. Number 4.
Yeah, go for it.
I have won a Turkish league, a Turkish Super Cup, and a Charity Shield in my career with Manchester United.
So a Turkish league, Turkish Cup, and a Charity Shield with United. So a forward that played for United and played in Turkey.
Yeah.
And obviously played for Lyon too.
Yeah.
Man United forward that played for Lyon. Like, the only one that is coming to my mind is Memphis Depay, and I know when you tell me who this player is, I'm going to be pissed off.
Yeah. Do you think we're going to clue 5 again?
I think we might have to, or
yeah. Clue 5, the final clue for 1 point. I first came to the Premier League when I was signed by Sir Alex Ferguson, but I became a league cult hero away from Old Trafford. It can't be a 0-pointer here, Richie.
I'm trying to think of Dutch forwards that played for Man United, and like I am.
Go up the set to Dutch forward. He's not Dutch.
He's not Dutch. Fuck. Where would he have played with Craig Bellamy at?
In the Premier League.
In the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
He was signed by Alex Ferguson. What the hell?
Obviously, you have to look at the likes of Edgar Davids and Craig Bellamy. They're at the end of their careers.
Yeah, Edgar Davids played for like Barnet or someone, didn't he?
He did, but it's not Barnet.
It's not Barnet, right?
Going to put you on the timer here, Connor. I'll give you 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's all right.
To get your final answer idea. And you're going to kick yourself if you don't get this.
I know I'm absolutely going to kick myself.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Final answer, Connor.
I've no idea, or genuinely, I have no idea. None.
The answer is Wilfred Zaha.
For Zaha.
Edgar Davids was at the final stages of his career whenever he first joined the first team at Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
Obviously, he shared a dressing room with Robin Van Persie at Man United.
Yeah.
He shared a dressing room with Craig Bellamy on loan at Cardiff.
Yes.
Played for Galatasaray. Is still actually owned by Galatasaray and is on loan to Charlotte FC, who is managed by Dean Smith in the MLS.
Right.
And he went from Palace to Lyon, then to Galatasaray, where he shared a dressing room with Ryan Cherky at Lyon.
I genuinely forgot Wilfred Zaha played for Lyon.
Yeah.
Genuinely, lad. Now, to be fair, for at least 4 clues of that, I was convinced it was a Dutch forward.
Yeah.
Like, convinced.
You were going to answer Memphis Depay again. Sebastian Huntelaar was not on my bingo card for you to answer.
I was so set on Dutch forwards, lad. And whenever you give this
stat, Alexander Lacazette play with Robin Van Persie.
So, lad, see when you're in the studio and you're doing them, like when we actually did them, like in the studio, I actually think it's a lot easier because you know you have somebody beside you that you're competing with. I feel like you're deep in the clues a bit more.
Yeah.
Whereas, do you see when it's done over this?
You're putting their thinking into the thing as well.
Yeah. Like, now, to be fair, I'm sure people in the comments will be like, "What an idiot!"
They're absolutely tough clues. They're tough clues. I think. I put that one in about Dean Smith. I think I think some people will know that Dean Smith is the manager of Charlotte.
Yeah.
And Charlotte FC's kind of only recognisable player anyway, is Wilfred Zaha. So I think some people will come on to that. But obviously, clue number 1, saying he's got 111 goals and 67 assists, could be anybody.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then obviously, I didn't know he shared a dressing room with Edgar Davids and all them players. But I chose my words particular, so I didn't say he shared a pitch with them.
Yes.
He was mates with them. He shared a dressing room with these players, because even Edgar Davids is kind of a iffy one because he was on a career break at the time as well, but they did share a dressing room at a stage as well.
Yeah. No, well, look, listen, anybody that gets it in, 4 clues or, 4 clues, 3 clues, 2 clues, like fucking fair play to them because I was lost on that one, lad. I was lost. There's only so many times you can say Memphis Depay before you fucking before you run out of ideas. Well, listen, folks, that is going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you very, very much for tuning in. Thank you for all the support recently as well, especially over on our social media posts. But listen, if you are watching this on YouTube or you're giving this a listen on Spotify, please do consider subscribing to us. We bring a new we bring a new podcast out every week. Me and Oran meet once a week. Cut up the latest football news from that week. So if you are interested in getting a weekly rundown of your football news, just consider hitting the subscribe button, consider hitting the follow button, hit that like button as well. Anything you can do to give us a hand would be greatly appreciated. But as always, thank you for listening, and Oran, you take it away.
Keep it bottom bins.
Keep it bottom bins. See you later, folks.
See you, folks.